Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and I'm also a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I want to talk about the women that actually punish men that they find attractive, punish emotionally, right? They perceive that you are above their level and they may choose individuals who may not fit them in terms of attraction, but might fit them in terms of what she thinks is her level. Usually, these women choose somebody else over you, but they keep coming back to you. And then eventually, they admit that they want you or they want to be with you. And in your mind, you might think that she's settling with you, or you are confused as to why it took so long for her to recognize this. Usually they're in deep denial of their attraction. So why is this? This is not a one size fits all, but it is something that happens to women that are unhealthy and they're dysfunctional. Most of the time, these women tend to gravitate towards emotionally unavailable or detached men, and those men who are less interested in them. Sometimes it's that way as well. The reason is because these men who mistreat these women, it often gives them a reason to stay unhealthy themselves, and it's something that they are familiar with. So it is not that we are actually this is not a place to make fun of these women because it actually does come from trauma. However, it is really difficult for the man such as yourself, a healthy, good man. You don't realize it, but you challenge her. And even if you don't mean to, you do, because she's going to see the way you behave and the way you act in comparison to her in a lot of different ways. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about why the unhealthy man gives her what you don't. And it's not necessarily healthy things or maladaptive things, but I want you to understand and have a reflection as to why this is occurring. And then at the end, I want to talk about who are these women so that you can keep in mind and be more mindful of, okay? So the first one is actually these unhealthy men actually let her deflect accountability. And so a man who might be someone that she perceives above her level, someone that is mentally healthy, someone that works on himself, you actually imply, whether you do it or not, you imply growth. You imply challenge. And that feels threatening to somebody who is avoiding self-reflection. And so actually, what ends up happening is she'll choose someone who she doesn't have to self-reflect with at all. Somebody who may not hold her accountable because he also doesn't hold himself accountable. And so I'm going to give something like a piece of this information that a lot of men miss. You think because you're not challenging her directly, that means you're not challenging her. And you might still not even understand that you probably still are challenging her directly because it's in your nature. You challenge yourself. And so even if you text her and say, I'm waking up and I'm going to the gym, if she's not waking up and going to the gym, or she sleeps in, or she, skips work a lot, or maybe she's not working, and I'm sure you don't worry about these things, you might not care, but in her mind, she's automatically comparing you to. You wake up early. Maybe you're already employed, but you're already preparing your resume for a higher paying salary, which she might have been in the same position for a long time. Again, you're not judging her, but even the things that you do in your life will challenge her, because let's say that guy, nothing against this guy either, maybe he has a part-time job, he's living with his mom, and there's nothing wrong with this either. He might be mentally challenged, like he's struggling so much mentally, that not mentally challenged in an intellectual way, like psychologically, he's already struggling with stuff so much that he has no room to push himself out of it. He's struggling with his own things. He might be struggling with a use issue. He might be struggling with anger. He might be struggling with a lot of things. And those things are more familiar because in her own mind, she also is struggling with a lot of these things. And she doesn't have to change them around him. She feels accepted, even though you are not accepting her. You're not rejecting her at all. You're just yourself. But the reality of that is there's subconsciously where the more she is with you, she will have to change. If you go on dates at a certain time or at a certain location and she's not comfortable or familiar with those things, she's going to feel bad about herself, even if you don't mean to. And that's her low self-esteem, but that is what's happening. She will be with a guy who also struggles with these self-esteem issues because it's more familiar, but especially because it allows her to deflect that accountability. She's going to have to tell herself, oh, why do I sleep in? Why do I skip work so much? How come he doesn't? You, for example. She's going to think, oh, I'm normal because he does it too, this guy that she's dating, right? There's nothing wrong with me. He does the same things I do. Do you see what I mean by that deflection of accountability? It's nothing that you're even doing towards her. It's how you treat yourself. The next one is distraction. Okay, this is incredibly common. Every couple that I've worked with that's very dysfunctional, I'm a therapist, you guys know that. You will see that the rest of their life is incredibly engulfed into their relationship. It's almost like a distraction for everything negative. So she's not talking about her friends, she's not talking to her friends, she's not talking to her mom or her dad. Every day is filled with this distraction, this relationship. An example could even be, I'm giving examples, so please don't think I'm talking about a specific case, but this is something I hear a lot. Let's say, for example, her friend is getting married, okay? So getting married for most people, this is something where you subconsciously, at least in American culture, we focus on that friend to some extent, right? We will allow her to talk about what she needs to. I don't know if this is the same case with men, by the way. It might not be, but for women, if your friend is getting married, you let her take up the emotional space, right? Because that's something that there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of prepping. If she is holding a wedding, normally there's a lot of things going on. So most friends know that, okay, this is kind of her time to vent, talk about what she needs to, ask if any friends need to do anything to help her out. That's usually how it is, at least particularly for females, probably a little different for males. And so let's say, for example, a friend is in a really unhealthy relationship. She will talk about this boyfriend not texting her, he doesn't care for her, etc., even during wedding planning or talking like that. This is typically inappropriate, but the friend that does this, subconsciously, she's distracting herself from the things that's bothering her. Maybe that she's not far along in her life. Maybe that she doesn't have enough financial situation to plan a wedding. Maybe because she's not getting married. She doesn't have to face those feelings because she's distracted in that relationship. She's thinking so much about that. She can't think about the distractions or the fears that she has in life. She's not worried about where she's going in life. She's not worried about what's happening in her career, her friendships. She's not worried about how her relationship is with her parents, because those things would be very overwhelming if she looked at them. They might be in a situation that needs a lot of attention from her, but she's almost using this relationship as a distraction to avoid these things. And so if she looks back and says, oh, why didn't I go far along in my career? She can say, well, I was in an unhealthy relationship. Why didn't I go far along in my weight loss journey? Because I was in an unhealthy relationship. It's easy for her to use that as a distraction, if that makes sense. The next one is actually interesting. It's familiar to what she grew up with. This is the most subconscious one. And it's to such a point where she might even struggle to accept her attraction to such a point where until she heals, she might not realize it, which is why you see these women come back sometimes when they are healed. In your mind, you might think, oh, she's older. She is just now using me. How come she didn't like me when she was younger? It's usually actually this. It's that she was so familiar with pain, dysfunction, rejection, abandonment from her father, maybe from her mother, and uncertainty might feel like a peaceful relationship is uncertain to her, and uncertainty is scary to her. And so she might feel that this guy is familiar, and you, whether she finds you attractive or not, because a lot of these guys who are rejected, you will be surprised. I know you guys will think, oh, it's about looks and things like that. It's not. There are plenty of sometimes it is. I'm not going to deny that, but there are plenty of very attractive men who are doing really well for themselves, their perception. They take care of themselves. They are fit. They're working for themselves. They're doing well. Maybe they have multiple businesses even. So they feel like they've really achieved a lot. But in relationships, they're struggling. Sometimes it might be a social skills issue, but it also can be that a lot of women I'll try and explain it more like this. A lot of these women who are in the dating pool some of them are dysfunctional. The ones who are not, they typically get in a relationship really quickly. And so I have mentioned this before. If you are a person who works on yourself, takes care of yourself, you're not attracting more partners. You're attracting higher quality partners, but they're harder to come by because two dysfunctional people, they would rather pair up with each other because you challenge them. And this is going to be the same for women, by the way, too, but it's a little more common with men because men tend to focus a lot more, at least still nowadays, they do tend to focus more on career, and they look for commitment a little later in life. It's not as common, but it still is more common than with women to some extent, especially depending on where you are from. And so you might see that you have worked on yourself, you've worked on maybe your inner trauma, and now you're in the dating pool and you're thinking, why am I not finding women who are also working on themselves? They are there, but it's harder to find. Women who are maybe more dysfunctional, they're going to choose dysfunctional men. And so it's because they're familiar to her and they don't have to make her face some of the fears that she's feeling, which is that uncertainty. She doesn't know that the relationship she has with you is going to feel good or healthy because she has never experienced a relationship like that. But for you, it makes sense because you've already worked on yourself. The last one is actually externalizing blame. Okay. Being with an unhealthy man actually allows her to blame him for the relationship failure. This is really interesting because you will see this a lot. And you will even see this with women who are older and they've been in this cycle. And I'm not judging anyone for their age, but I really want to share something that I see a lot as someone who practices and sees so many different lives. Let's say we have a woman. This is hypothetical, okay? Maybe she's in her 50s or 60s, okay? Maybe she's feeling a little unhappy. Her friend, who is also close to her age, got remarried, okay? And she's saying, oh, my friend got remarried because all she looks for is a relationship. She doesn't care about her kids or anything like that. I'm doing this for my kids. I'm staying divorced after my ex-husband left me because I care about my kids, even though her kids might be like 20s, 30s, maybe even 40s. And so this is denial, okay? But in her mind, what she's saying is my life was ruined because of this, my ex-husband. And it's his fault for the relationship failure. I can get any guy I want to. I just don't want to because I'm busy, right? She might say things like that. And these are a lot of denial because what's actually happening is in that beginning relationship, she did pick an unhealthy man for a lot of these reasons. Maybe she wanted to make it work. I'm not blaming her, but maybe he didn't. Whatever the case is, it's not their fault. They had a lot of dysfunction, okay? And now, as she's older, she might push a lot of men away. She might not want to be in relationships because she's actually afraid that if she dates another guy who's very different from her ex, that the relationship will also fail. And so then what would that mean? Like logically, let's try and think about it. If her first relationship failed with her ex, he was dysfunctional. She dates another guy and he's not dysfunctional, but he also leaves her. What could that mean? It could mean that maybe she has some dysfunction herself. And so a lot of people will think, well, okay, that's a pretty specific fear. Would really so many women have this fear? Yeah, a lot of women do because dysfunction shows that maybe it would show that maybe that first husband left not because of his dysfunction, although it was prominent and it was there. Maybe he left because of her dysfunction. And that's really scary to face. And it takes a lot of accountability. Accountability is hard. Any of us who have worked on ourselves, all of us, we are our own projects, right? We know how difficult it can be to face all of these things. We have to face our own demons to become better. It's hard. And so some people would rather deny it. And so who are these women? Usually they are women who have absent or uncaring fathers. Okay. So it's a very detached environment with her father. And so she is very familiar to the pattern of wanting approval and wanting to be with a man who doesn't want her because that's how she feels with her father. And so that's why her whole life, she might have actually searched for men who are not healthy themselves because they remind her of her father. And she's trying to rewrite that narrative. The next one is she comes from neglect and abuse. She actually feels like pain is familiar and calm and safety is unfamiliar. And she's scared of that. Okay. And the last one is women who were raised in an environment directly or indirectly to not expect worthiness of herself. So it tends to be low self-esteem. So let's give an example of a hypothetical man. He wants to do good for himself. He's working on his career. He's working on his social skills. He's working on his friendships. He's working on dating. So he's working on himself. He's actively working on himself because why? He thinks he's worthy of those things. He feels like he's worthy of dating. That's why he's still working on it. He thinks he's worthy of improving his social skills because he knows that he can be better, because he cares about himself enough to be better. Does that make sense? Like a person who does not think they're worthy are not going to actively seek these things. She doesn't feel subconsciously like she's worthy of that end result, so she doesn't even seek those things. And so, interesting enough, these maladaptive women, they do give men who are attractive to her a harder time because she's terrified of accepting that she will have to face what it means to be with you. And she might have to also, maybe she feels like she's less attractive than you and she's going to have to accept that experience. And so I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.